Welcome back to Under Oath. Today we have author Don Winslow. Don, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right.
I got it. I have the benefit of also writing comic books. I'm an attorney, and every time I see a really successful writer, the tough question I always ask them is, as you're writing these books, is the thought, God, I hope they love it, or is it, listen, this is my story and I'm going to tell it?
Yeah, the latter. Listen, I've been very lucky with this book, by the way. It's gotten the best reviews of my career. Stephen King said it was the best crime fiction in 20 years. Jim Patterson called it extraordinary. But I never think about that stuff when I'm writing. Because that's up to other people, right? That I just try to control what I can control. And what I care about is writing good characters and good stories. And that's it. So I don't think about those things at all when I'm writing.
I mean, this book's called The Final Score. And what's interesting is, you've written a lot of successful books, and you go, well, I'm going to take some time off. I don't know if I'm going to write anymore. I'm going to start doing things for the world. And do you suddenly just go, you know what? I'm a writer. Writer's right.
Yeah, that was part of it, Jeff. The other part of it, though, was, as you alluded to, I took some time off to focus on political activities. It did not work out the way that I hoped it would work out, but I was still determined to retire. But this book just kept talking at me. It just would not shut up. It would not stop. And I finally thought, okay, that's telling me something. I should sit down and write it.
What's interesting, it's hard to explain to people. Sometimes you're writing a book, sometimes you're writing a series, and there's that book that keeps saying it needs to be written, and it's at the back of your head, and you're going, no, the guys want me to do the sequel. I'm working on this. How many books came in between this one and finally getting it out?
Boy, a bunch, Listen, sometimes these ideas that I have take years to come to fruition. This is a slow cooker kind of business for the most part. I mean, every once in a while you have a short story that's just like, bam, right? Sit down, blah, 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 blah. End of the day, bam. It's that kind of thing. It's a sprint. That's unusual in my life anyway, in my career. And so, some of the ideas on this I had years ago. Others were fairly recent, and there were sort of larger books and novels in between. But I'm that kind of crazy cat that, I usually write 2 books at a time, at least, and so I know how crazy this sounds. And by the look on your face, I can see how crazy this sounds. But I very often have a morning book and an afternoon book. So
It's like 2 jobs. I'm going to the second job now.
Okay, I had never thought of it that way, but you're quite right. So I start work quite early in the morning and on sort of the, if you will, the main project. But then usually, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the afternoon, I'm a little sick of it. It's a little sick of me. So I'll go to the other book.
Now, what people always, since I do comic books, I do panels and everything else, and people always go, well, how do you write? I said, listen, everybody has their own way, but
Absolutely.
You got to know where you're going. And they go, what do you mean? I said, well, I know my endings. I know some people don't. But it was like this. There was this movie called Sahara. It was a horrible movie.
Yeah, sure.
And one of the characters is on this windsurfer burning across the desert, and one says to the other one, he goes, "Hey, do you know where we're going?" He goes, "No, but we're making great time." And I think about that with writers because they're going, I'm on my 500th page, but I don't know where it's going to end. I'm going, you probably needed to know that before you wrote the first 500.
Yeah, I don't. Listen, I know the next thing, right? The way I put this is if you pull out of your driveway, you're going to have to turn left or right. Those are your choices. And so I know what the next turn is usually. Okay. But I don't, I'm afraid of getting stuck into an ending because then I'm afraid that I'll shoehorn things in order to stay with that ending that maybe shouldn't be, And so what I try to do is to stay more fluid. I try to live inside the character and to think, okay, well, what would the character do now? And sometimes that works, and sometimes it takes you down a blind canyon, and you throw away, a week's work and start over again.
Now you just said something, throwing away a week's worth, and that's the toughest thing when I talk to artists and writers. I'm going, just because you wrote it or did it, it doesn't mean it has to come out.
Correct.
You can dump a page or two, you can get rid of this stuff, but they feel sometimes like it's just like they're children and they can't do it.
Yeah, I think my record is 312 pages.
Jeez.
And hitting delete. And then I went for an hour-long walk, feeling sorry for myself, and then came back and sat down at the keyboard and started writing again.
312 pages.
Yeah.
If I have to estimate, on a good day, you go anywhere from 5 to 10 pages. So
that's about right. Yeah.
That's about 30 to 40 days of work.
Oh, at least, yeah.
That's a long walk. That's a real long walk. An hour. It might have felt like it was a little longer than that. I don't know.
It was a painful walk, but the results were good. Because had I stayed with that, I would have just wasted another 30 or 40 days, right? Because I'd made a bunch of wrong decisions, wrong choices. And so I had to admit that to myself, and say, hey, Winslow, this isn't good. This is bad stuff. It's wrong. You're not going to be able to save it by making minor adjustments. That's just deck chairs on the Titanic. So, bam, hit the key, get it over with, and suck it up.
Success is tough because success breeds sequels. And when somebody loves something you do, you're going, God, I have this, like you just said, this book has haunted you and you've wanted to tell it over and over. But I guarantee between the agents and the managers, hey, we need the sequel to this one. We need this. This is the moneymaker, not the new book. People want this character over and over and over.
Yeah.
And that's difficult to the creative mind.
I've been very, very fortunate in terms of my agent, Shane Salerno, who's just always supported creativity in big projects, and the editors that I've worked with, the late, great Sonny Mehta, maybe one of the last of the great editors. And I'll never forget sitting down with him, over lunch in New York and having the what's next conversation, right? And I pitched to him 3 or 4 very standard crime stories like I'd done before. And then I pitched him this crazy 40-year saga with 5 major characters. And he looked at me, he's a very soft-spoken guy. And he said, well, we know you can do the other things. We don't know you can do this. Let's do this.
That's kind.
Greatest gift, and yeah.
I mean, I've never, editors are tough for me because if I write a joke and I really want that joke to stay,
yeah,
I have actually written that joke back into books when I sign the books.
The same thing, yeah.
And I go, hold on, page 7. I wrote this joke and I want to put it back in. And most people allow me to do it because they think it's a cool thing. But some people are like, what are you doing? No, I wrote this joke and they took it out. How tough is that for you when they pull something that you really loved?
Tough. I think my record is 5 times back and forth on about a 30-page sequence in a book called The Force, where everything stops and these 5 veteran cops are sitting having dinner and they're just telling stories. And they're all good stories. They're all true stories, by the way, funny stories. And the editor would take it out and I'd put it back in, and the editor would do this. This went on a whole bunch of times. And but my point was, look, they're true stories. I heard these stories from cops. They're funny, but the structural point was, we're toward the end of what I would describe as Act 2. I thought that the readers needed a break in the action, a breather, before we sort of kick the ball down the stairs, right? It was, for me, a pacing issue. And so I just insisted on it and it stayed in.
Every writer, whether they like it or not, most of them want to see their books on the next level. They want to see their creations come to life. And that could be good and bad at the same time, because people go, "Oh, I loved your book. You know, I love the movie Savages. I love that." And you go, "Well, I wrote all this other stuff too." You know, you have things that you loved, and that might not be your favorite book. And you have to be, "Hey, no, no, no." And now you have people fighting like hundreds of millions of dollars. They're like, "I want this next book." And what kind of humility, or can you even look at yourself in the mirror when you go, they're actually fighting, the number's now at 100 million. I mean, that must just be, you're going, are you nuts? Is this crazy?
Let's be clear, the 100 million doesn't come to me.
No, well, I know that. I'm just,
Your audience might not. And then I'll have kidnapping things going on. Listen, I don't have a problem with humility, because I know how many times a day I fail. As you do, this as well, right? When you fail your business. And so I'm not that guy who thinks, "Oh, I'm so great because these people want this work." I'm thinking, by the way, usually by the time that happens, I'm in at least the middle of the next project. And that's really, what's occupying my mind, and all of that is the issues and the problems of that book or that story. Sure, it's a kick to have, really quality, good people want your work, and I love that. But really, I'm more focused on what I'm doing in the moment.
Now, I got to talk to Jerry Brockheimer a couple weeks ago. And
cool. Yeah.
I asked him the tough thing. And the tough thing is this, is that when you are working on another project, like I'll be at Comic-Con in 7 months, and I'm already 2 books into my next one, and I'm sitting here selling this book that feels like a child I sent to college. And, and he said, "Jeff, that's your job." Even some guy like Jerry Brockheimer says, it's your job. You can't forget that. That's the part of it's writing, and the other part is promoting it. And you have to travel all over the world with a book that, you set into the world, basically a year or two ago.
Yeah.
I mean, is it hard for you to go not to start talking about the new books when you're promoting the new?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. There are times I've forgotten the characters' names of the book.
That happens.
Or somebody asked me a question about an aspect of the book that I don't recall at the moment, which is a tough, embarrassing kind of moment. Listen, but it is part of the job, and it's a responsibility that you owe to a lot of people. You owe it to your agent, to your publicist, to the editor, to booksellers, right? Because without those booksellers, I don't have this job that I love. And so it'd be on a certain level easy to sort of blow it off and say, well, that's not important, and I'm a writer, and all of that. But I think Brookheimer's right in that case. You do have a responsibility to other people.
You had mentioned something about people asking you about characters in your book, and it's always unusual when somebody's belief about what that character, their motivations are, is not even close to what you're thinking. Right. You go, "No, I just needed a big dude who looked good." And they think it was something from my childhood or something. I mean, no, this is just some dude. I don't know. Maybe it was in a, John Hughes movie. I don't know what I got it from.
Yeah, that happens a lot. But, here's my thought about that. I'm not going to dictate to a reader what anything means to that reader. Right? If that's their interpretation, that's their interpretation. That's their experience of the book. So I have one experience of the book as a writer, but each individual has a different experience of the book as a reader. And I honestly believe that their interpretation is just as valid as mine. I'm not going to impose this authorial thing of, "No, that's not what I meant. You're a fool." No, that's your interpretation of the book. That's your interpretation. That's your experience. God bless. Go with it.
No, you tend to get beat up when you say things like that. I know that. People come to my booth sometimes. Now, the hardest thing for me is this. Going back to a character I haven't touched in 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that right now with a character, and I'm trying to fix the stuff that I hated that I wrote 20 years ago in it. And I'm going back and I'm going, am I going to take a lot of crap about this? Because they're going to go, "Well, this isn't true to the original." I said, "Well, I'm the god in this one. I created this character. This is mine. Do I have the rights to do with what I want to do with it?"
Yeah, I wrote a big fat trilogy on drug
Yeah.
trafficking that goes for about 40 years. And when I was writing the third of that, I had to have the first two books on my desk to look stuff up. Did
Yeah.
I kill that guy? Can I? Am I writing about a person who's dead, who perforce can't be doing the things that I have him doing? So, yeah, and there is a temptation to fix it, isn't there?
Yeah.
But I find it pretty hard to do, pretty difficult to do.
I was writing a horror graphic novel one time, and I had a character that I love so much, but I know I'm supposed to kill them. And I kept bumping this character down the line because there's 9 people who have to die in the typical horror thing. And he was
Yeah,
so good that I go, I can't kill him.
yeah.
How tough is it for you when you love a character so much, you go, but he's got to die? I mean, have you ever given a guy a reprieve that you
Yes,
plan to kill?
once, once. A character called Marisol in a book called The Cartel, and she later appears in its sequel, The Border. Um, yeah, I didn't have the heart. I did not have the heart. I wrote her death 4 or 5 times, by the way. It just didn't. At the end of the day, I couldn't do it. Couldn't bring myself to do it.
When you
Yeah.
try to tell people something like that and you're trying to get into their, when they're trying to explain that, you go, no, these are real to me. These are not throwaways. These ideas are life. And Lionel Richie, when they asked him where he comes up with his music and everything else, he said,
Yeah.
I sit at the piano and I go somewhere and I come
Yeah.
back and I have it with me. And I find out a lot of creative people have that where they go, I don't know where it came from. Of course I had my own experiences, but does that happen to you where you're going, God, I have no clue where this guy came from?
Absolutely. I would say that if I was to look back at most of my best writing, I don't remember it. I don't remember doing it. Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I mean, when you're doing long books, right? Each of those drug trilogy books comes in at a little less than 1,000 pages, I think.
Jeez.
I have spent more time with the protagonist of that trilogy than I have with any real human being in my life, with the possible exception of my wife. Right? Day after day, year after year, with Art Keller, with Marisol, with some of these people. And so, yeah, they definitely become part of your life, part of the fabric of your life, no question about it. And so there was a character in that book, Pablo, who was a reporter that I originally intended to be a minor character. And he kind of took over quite a bit of the book. And I knew he had to die because I was writing about a situation where in reality, over 200 Mexican journalists were murdered covering those stories. So I knew that he was going to die. And writing that death scene was horrific.
That's tough. Well, Don, your new book is called The Final Score. I hope it is not the final score, as far as your writing career goes. I mean,
We'll see,
you make
yeah.
that determination, and
Yeah.
congratulations with all the success. And it was so good talking to you.
So good talking to you. I enjoyed the conversation, and good luck with all your stuff as well.
Thank
So.
you.